Hey everybody, happy 2023 to you. So today's video is actually a year late. If you watched my videos from last year, my Drop the Ball Part 1 and Part 2, you may have noticed that Part 2 didn't actually finish up the painting. And it was brought to my attention recently by a couple of comments that were asking if there was a Part 3. And so I had to go back and look, and I realized that I completely spaced. I have no idea what was going on, but I completely spaced putting up that third video. So that's what this is. This is a video where I finish up that painting. So if you watched those two last year and wondered what the heck I did to finish it and how I got the lettering on there, you can watch this video and I'll show you how I did that. So let's take a look at that, but don't forget to hit subscribe and like this video. It really helps my channel, so I don't want to leave you hanging anymore. Let's dive in and I'll show you how I finish up this video. Painting. Okay, we're nice and dry. I got my cup of coffee that I'll probably set aside because I don't want to stick my brush in it like I've been known to do. So let's continue on with this project. I want to darken some areas and I want to be careful to not, I want to play the game of light and dark next to each other. So some areas I'm going to want to leave a little lighter, and I think the best way to do that is to add water up here and then thicker paint down here as I come down, and in the areas I want dark against this light, I'll darken up this area. So you'll see what I'm saying in just a sec. Take a sip of that yummy coffee. It's freezing in Portland, Oregon. It's predicted to snow, so I'm all cozied up in my house, in my studio, have the day off from a very physical job, and that always feels really wonderful. So sticking again with the same colors that I've used throughout this painting, we get great unity that way. I'm going to go ahead and add water, and I'll add a little water to that as well to keep that nice and soft in the edge when I come down here. So I'm going to tip my paper up. Actually, I think I'm going to go upside down on this one. So we'll add our paint at the bottom and allow that to flow up into that area of wet that I just added. I'm going to continue to add some of the shimmer into that too. Let's grab a little thicker paint consistency. So I'm just going to let that flow. And same thing over next door neighbor here. I love that Bronzite. It's really cool. And those two are flowing together. That's okay too. I don't mind that so much. A little bit of gold over here. And then I can come down this way and encourage that to come back down. Again, keeping in mind I want that edge to be a little bit lighter. Go about that a little differently on that. I can darken up this edge too after my paint dries. And this is where the negative painting comes in. I've got my lines from the plastic wrap and I'm just painting color around them. And I'm bringing some gold and silver into that. Silver and gold. And how about a little of that Quinacridone gold. Another one of my favorites. I think I'll drop in just a little touch of the turquoise so it looks like it's continuing behind that line. Let's drop in a little bit of water and let that flow. That's another fun technique, is to just drop in water and it's going to move the paint in different directions. Now, I love this amethyst as well, and I believe it kind of mingled in with that gold. So I think I'll continue that trend. I want a little bit more of the bronzite in there. So let's tip the paper up the opposite direction and get some of the bronzite. That way it stays more pure. And then I can bring that down a little bit. Okay, so now for the amethyst over here, I'm just going to go ahead and add a dark stroke and then soften it out. As I come down, I'll come around here and lighten it up with water. Coming in here with my turquoise, and I'm going to add a little bit of that amethyst down there too. This is experimental stuff. It doesn't have to be, there's no rules, so I can do whatever I feel like doing. And also, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I'm not going to fret about it. I'll just try it again. It really is fun to do this negative painting. More amethyst over here. I might add a little Carbazole violet to that. That's a Daniel Smith color as well, so that'll give a darker value to that amethyst. This darker area is going to make those globes pop forward. And also we've got a nice play on complementary colors here with the purple and the orange. So that is really cool. And as I'm looking at this little edge here, I probably will come along that and lighten it up by lifting out some color and some of the antique gold. And then I'm going to come right down from that wet paint and pull it down along that light edge. And I'll come along the same line, opposite side, more gold. And then up here, let's turn the paint paper in a different direction and come up with a little bit of that opera rose. And I do love this little shimmer, so I'm going to continue that up here. Actually drop in a little bit there too. Isn't that fun? I love this. Right in here, that's a little bit muted neutral. Come right in next to that with my gold. And brighten that up just a smidge. I do like what's happening here, so I don't want to mess with that too much. Okay, so I really like this area as well. I hesitate to do anything to it. I think right in here, I'll go ahead and darken this little area and add some burnt orange. And how about some of that Piemanite? I should have had that all ready to go. I want a thicker mixture, and it takes a little bit more work to get that dried paint flowing, but I believe that's because it's one of those granulating colors, Primatech Daniel Smith. I like that. Also, a little bit of the Carbazole Violet in with the burnt orange gives me a really rich dark. I really like the two of those together. And I said I was going to keep that light, but as I was looking at my painting, I felt the need to darken it up a little bit and keep this edge a little bit lighter. As this is a little bit drier now, I can think about getting a thick stroke of this silver in. I like how that looks. And if I get a thicker stroke, it'll stand out a little bit more. So let's do that. This is festive, it's New Year's, the ball is gonna drop. This doesn't have to be anything particular, you know. It could be streamers, it could be the way the light's reflecting off the background. It's just fun. All right, so we're gonna let this layer dry. This is all about layers, layer upon layer upon layer. And as I say that little statement, I decide to carry that through up here in this one little area, adding Carbazole, burnt orange, and Pimonite together, and a touch of Glimmer Shimmer. And I'm going to do the same right over here. Kind of carry it through. I feel like that was needed. So some of it you just have to listen to your painting, take a step back, go grab a cup of coffee, and come back and take a look at it with a fresh eye. And then you can, a lot of times you'll just see what to do next. When I'm too up close to it, I lose track of what I'm doing and I get carried away in the detail. So by stepping back a little bit, taking the time, taking a break, it's always good. And also if I start getting too tired, the creative juices don't flow so well. So that also, it's important to listen to your body. If I'm tired, I definitely feel, I definitely feel it, and it shows in my paintings. I start putting down paint haphazardly and not really thinking it through, and then if it turns out it's a happy accident, but a lot of times in that struggle, I lose interest in what I'm doing. So I'd rather step back and take a break. More glimmer, Glimmer Shimmer, that's that antique gold. I went to a smaller brush there because I want a finer line. Time to let it dry. Take another break and come back and see what the painting's telling us. Had a chance to let it dry and step back and decide what next. Initially, I thought I was gonna make this the darker rather than this, but I like how this looks dark instead. So I'm gonna strengthen a little bit over here, darkening up this turquoise. And I looked at it from across the room and decided I needed a little more darkness in here as well. So I'm gonna do that and probably just continue the darker in the background so those globes stand out and look like they're reflecting the light. So let's go ahead and get that part finished. And I'm going to turn it upside down again, adding this additional layer, going with my clean water. I've got this little ball jar in here. I've got a big Tupperware and then my little ball jar in the center of that so I can grab clean water. I do confess I get them mixed up at times, so I end up having to refresh my water a lot. Oop, just like I did there. Told ya. So rinse and then get clean water. And I'm gonna go ahead and add my turquoise, coming in with my burnt orange. Let's do that. Those two seem to go well together. And I'll come over to this area too. This time I want to come up here with a little bit of clear water so they blend together easier. And work that down. Don't necessarily need to be terribly dark, but I do want my text to stand out when I go ahead and add that. So now I want to add some more of that Opera Rose in here. The greenish of the turquoise and that rose mute each other, or gray each other down, I should say. So that'll push those colors to the back rather than having them stand out so much. A little bit more of the turquoise, and I'm just going to keep on working my way down, layer by layer. A little bit more of the pink. Ooh, I like how that looked. That was cool. I'm going to drop in some Quinacridone gold. Come right here next to the globe and bring that down. I like how that looks. That looks cool. Then I'm going to go grab my smaller, let's see. I've got a number 2 Utrecht. I want to draw just a little slight, tiny dark line next to the globe there. I'll do that using my turquoise. And then I'm going to come right back over the top of that with my burnt orange. Not quite that much. Pay attention to the tip of my brush. Sometimes I can get a big drip of paint, and then that doesn't work so well. Now, do you see how that little touch of dark has just made that ball stand out? And then I'll soften this little area with a diluted gold. Bring that down. And I'm just going to soften that a little bit by dragging my brush. A little bit more of that burnt orange. And bring it behind that little streamer or whatever it is. And then voila, I've got a little bit darker area. So my script will go across here. Now I want to darken that area, going back to my number 6 Utrecht. And I'm just going to get that wet and drop in my turquoise and let that kind of flow together. I think I need to bring that up in here to have it carry through behind that line. And go back into that silver. What that does also is softens it. I like how that softens it. So even let's come right along that globe. And again, I'm going to come back into that globe here and darken. I just stuck my finger in the paint and darken that edge. Again, thinking I want to darken those areas. Using the same colors, remember. I'm just sticking with the same palette the whole way through. Turn that upside down again. Going back to my number 2 Utrecht if I don't drop it. As I drop it, and a little mixture of burnt orange mixed together on my palette rather than dropping it in. There's a difference in what it looks like if you drop it in or if you mix it on the palette. And that's something that would be good to experiment with. Do little swatches of both, dropping in the color and also mixing it together on the palette, the same colors. And again, I'm coming back in with that beautiful gold, which I love that. And I've just grabbed a little bit extra burnt orange. There we go. Okay, so again, we're going to let this dry. Come back in after it's dry and do some fun work in those globes. I think we're at a point here where we need to finish this up. It's one of those paintings that I could tend to continue and continue and continue to detail, but I will not bore you with all the detail. But I will come back in and we'll do some finish work on this as soon as the rest of these layers have dried and done what they're going to do. I still think I need to darken this area, so we're going to do a little bit more and hope that that'll be quite enough. I want my white script to stand out, so add another layer quickly and hope that it is quite dark enough. A little more burnt orange in this area, and really just using the whole brush to drag that down. And I do keep wanting to add that gold. I think if that paint is dark enough underneath, that will work just fine. Let's go ahead and do a little more over here. Just want a little bit more of that burnt orange into those other areas so it doesn't look like such a hard transition. Okay, now to dry. Now we come to the decorating, the candy, so to speak. So I'm going to pick out some of these squares. We've still got our lines drawn in there. I don't want to get carried away, but you certainly can do what you feel like doing. It is a little bit meditative to go in and start filling in these squares. So I'm going to go to my smaller, let's see, I think I'm going to switch to, I have a long round by Princeton. It's also a number 2 like the Utrecht, but it's a little bit longer bristle, so I can come up on the tip, but I have more of the body of the brush that I can use as well. So let's get a little of that burnt orange, and I'm going to darken some of the squares. And the way I'll darken my burnt orange is by mixing that Carbazole violet with it. So the orange and the purple are across from each other on the color wheel, and so they will gray out each other. And because the Carbazole is such a dark color, I'm going to get a really nice rich brown. So I'm going to do a couple of squares of darker and just keep, those were similar but lighter in value was the second one I did. Kind of liked that. Come down here and add some more of that. My sleeve is getting in my way. It's one thing that drives me nuts, are my sleeves getting in my way. Okay, so then I'm gonna decide to come down here. I wanna keep this square light, so I'll get a little darker value over the top of that square, come over here, kind of alternating back and forth, light against dark, dark against light, playing that game. And then since I have my lines drawn in there, I can drag my brush along and let those lines be seen more. Come up here. I'm going to let that light area stay light. So on and so forth. So I'm going to do that throughout this ball, and then we'll come back and add some text. So I think that I'm going to stop at that and go ahead and add the text. So we've got a nice dry layer here that I can go ahead and add the text, and I'll come back and show you how we're going to do that. So I printed out Happy New Year on my computer onto pages and picked a font that I thought would be festive and fun. And as you can see, I've got white on my hands. This is white graphite paper that I used to transfer this image onto my watercolor painting. And the first thing that I'm going to do is grab a piece of tracing paper and tape that on here so it doesn't move around on me. And so I'll tape it down and then get a black marker. And I've got a number 8, or that's a number 5. Let's see, I've got a number 8, and this is a micron. I use these in some of my paintings to do ink and watercolor. They're acid-free, and I can put them in a watercolor painting. So go ahead and trace around our image. It's not very bold. I might, when I transfer it onto my paper, I'll probably make this font a little thicker with the marker that I'm going to be using. So this is a really fun way to add text to a watercolor painting, because watercolor is transparent. You can't really very successfully put white text over it. So I've tried masking out the font, which can be really hard because you've got a bumpy paper and you don't get a really smooth flow of that masking fluid. It is really hard to achieve that. Okay, so the tricky part with this is getting it straight, getting my font straight. So I'm going to put this down. Actually, bring this down a little bit lower. And I want to put, let's see, I think what I'll do is cut this. Cut a little, that's wide enough, so I don't have that distracting me, that other text. So making sure I put the graphite down, I can kind of see through. It. So I'm going to tape that to the sides here so it doesn't slide around. I want a nice clean transfer. And what this is going to do, if you've not guessed already, is it's going to transfer my, I think I'll do the same thing here. It's going to transfer my text in white graphite so I can then go over it with a marker. And this may make it a little bit easier to get straight. We'll see. Set those aside, that aside, and see if I can line it up and not get it all crooked. So I think, oh, and then I want to make sure it's centered too, because my tape is right here. I want that to be in the painting and not off the edge. So it's almost too big. I could eliminate one of those or two of those. Let's eliminate two of those. And then I'm going to imagine that they're not there. And then we'll tape it down and hope for the best. Then I'm going to get my sharpened pencil right here. This is also Utrecht. I didn't realize I had a Utrecht drawing pencil. And trace over, just draw, oh, that was a little too sharp. So draw over my font. Okay, so I have drawn over the text here. And let's lift this up and see if I kept it centered or not. I don't know how to get that white graphite off if I haven't. Oh, it's a little too high. Well, let's see. How do I fix that? Good grief. The first time I transferred it on here, it was too high. So I was like, okay, so how do I remove the graphite? And I'm like, graphite is graphite, so maybe an eraser would work, which it did. But I have to warn you, because the paper's soft, there are little indentations where that previous text was. I don't think it's going to make a difference, so we're just going to go forward. I think if you added more paint, in fact, let me just see what happens if I put a little bit of paint. It might just kind of cover up what, or it could make it show through. It looks like it covered it up, so, you know, the only problem with that would be that you're adding paint over dried paint and then potentially messing with the color. So over here, I think I'll just add some paint or water, kind of move that paint around a little bit. And I really can't see where those lines were, so that's good. That's what we want. Okay. So I didn't want to have that paint potentially bleed into my marker. And this is a One for All acrylic marker by Molotow. And you can get these on Amazon. I'll put the links to find these different brushes and paints in my description below. So I'm just going to trace, and again, I thought to go a little bit thicker. Sometimes this comes out a little bit thick, so I like to have a paper towel handy. And you can prime this by pushing it up and down, and you see how it just started the flow. So let's go back over this with this acrylic marker. This is so cool to be able to do this. And I'm just going to follow my graphite line. And I did print this out bold when I got this text and used my pages to get it, to print it out. I did do it in a bold text, but it's not super bold. And what I've done before is get a little fine brush and come next to that with a paint color, which is what I'll do in this case. I'll come alongside of this with some of the same colors that it's sitting in front of, and that'll help give it a three-dimensional look and stand out a little bit more. So I eliminated 2 of the exclamation points, and I think I can add 1 more back in to get that looking centered. You can also use these markers to do a little extra white, which is kind of cool. Keep my hand out of it though. Wait till that dries before you stick your hand in it. That's a good idea. About a couple up here. And that'll be my string. I think I'll do a darker one over there. Really fun just playing around, experimenting with different techniques and ideas. And how about let's do a little bright edge there. As if the light is reflecting. How fun is this? This is really cool. Now don't get carried away with this part either. It's really easy to add a lot. It's kind of like a little is great, a lot isn't always better. So we're going to try to keep from getting carried away. Okay, so now I would add a little bit of color around my lettering. So I'm going to go with a very small Utrecht #1. It's got a very nice tip on it, so I've got to do this really carefully. So I want a nice mixture of the paint. I don't want it too thin and watery. I don't want it watering up on my brush, and I'm just going to do one side as if the light were shining and this is the shadow side. And then where it's browner, I'll change up my color a little bit and come on the inside of the A and just keep moving across my letters. Okay, now that I've added some of that, I want to go back over with another layer of this. I might lose some of the outer color, but I want these white letters to really stand out. So layer by layer. One thing, if you get a little bit of paint over where you didn't want it on this marker, you can just go over it with clear water because it is acrylic. It's going to dry kind of rubbery. Not rubbery, but it's acrylic you cannot lift once it's dried. So I could go over that with water and not lift it, but I could lift that watercolor paint that I was using to paint around it. I could lift that up off the lettering with water. So now what I want to do, and this is totally optional, but I did it, let me grab this painting. I did it in this one, and I like the little bouquet lighting in the background, so I thought it would be kind of fun to put a couple of them here and there and use my Circle Master to do that. So again, I'm going to get clean-ish. This is pretty clean paper towel. I want clear water. And what you have to be careful of on this is pressing too hard, using too much pressure with your damp sponge. So I'm just going to really lightly, first of all, I've got this little sponge here. Can't remember what these are called. It's like a sea sponge maybe. And I've got it damp, not wet. I've got it damp. So what I want to do is just very carefully come over and rub out some of the color and then just blot it. What happens if it's too wet is that water from the sponge, if you put too much pressure, will go right underneath this Circle Master. So you don't want the water to go under that so much. So you can lift it out and you've got some color lifted. And how about a little bigger one over here? And I'm just using some circular motion. Now also something to keep in mind on this, if it's a staining color, it's not going to lift out as easily as with a non-staining color. So did get under that a little tiny bit. And I also came next to that, which I think I'll just go with and use an even smaller circle. This just looks like background lighting. It's kind of fun, festive. Press that out. And also I've got another little circle. I'm just going to leave it there. It's because they're so close together. I don't know what you could do. Maybe put a piece of tape over the top of the neighbors to avoid that, but it's not a big deal. I'm going to just go with it. And how about kind of offset that a little bit. Just picking some areas where it would be kind of fun to have a little light bouquet. And there I did it, see? It's okay, it's okay. It all works out in the end. I tried using a brush to scrub it out. I didn't really like the way that looked, so I'm gonna make sure that's dry next time. And yeah, let's put a little tape on the neighbors to avoid the unwanted lifting. And I'm just dabbing up any extra water that does get underneath there, which kind of is maybe a little inevitable. Let's go down here with, now this is the Phthalo, so it's probably not going to lift as much. That's good. And I think I want a bigger one somewhere, so dry that off. And go with, not that big. A little bit bigger right in here. That might do the trick. There we go. Okay, so there we have it. I'm going to stop at that. As I say that, I'm going to come up here and tape off. Actually, it'd be kind of fun to have that little progression of sizes. Let's see what it looks like. don't know if I'm going to be able to get quite in there. Nope. Okay, so in that case, I'll just go right here. That didn't quite come up, so I'm going to help it along with my little brush. And again, that's that phthalo color, so it's more staining. What if, put that aside and add some gouache. So gouache is just a more opaque, really watercolor. So I thought, how about add some of that silver shimmer to the white gouache and see what happens when I add it to one of my little bouquet areas. Brighten that up just a little bit. Kind of like that. I'll drop in a little bit more of the silver. That'll probably give a nice shimmer when it's all dry. But it's still going to be transparent, so you're going to see some of that color from underneath. Okay guys, I hope that was fun for you and that you go try this yourself. And if you like what you see here, I plan on doing more of these fun little tutorials and how-to videos. So hit the subscribe button and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you in the next video.